And welcome into a Friday edition of the Backstage Pass into the week. Brings a great show, no doubt, and of course, some great shows this week. If you missed it, go back on the Facebook page or YouTube channel and check it out on the Backstage Pass presented by our good friends over at Bangtail Whiskey, MitchMacs.com, and Hank Jr. Productions. Back here with Jeff McMahon on the Backstage Pass. Yours truly, Brandon Morrell, and pleased to welcome in an icon in music. And I tell you what, these guys have been doing it for a long time, and they're still doing it here in 2022, keeping a busy schedule. John Oates of the great Hall & Oates band joins us here on the show. John, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty well.
Well, pleased to
nice late afternoon chat with you guys.
It's always good to catch up, man. Well, I tell you what, hey, first out of the box, man, you've got a pretty cool thing coming up with Guthrie Trap and some big things out there too. People paying attention to John Oates Official on Instagram and of course all your socials out there. Tell me about this and a lot of cool things coming up in the line for John Oates and Guthrie Trap. Tell the folks about that.
Yeah, well, Guthrie and I have known each other quite a while now, over 15 years, and we met at the Telluride Bluegrass Festival. Guthrie was playing with Jerry Douglas, and I was sitting in doing a weird reggae version of Maneater with Sam Bush, and we met, and I was blown away by his playing, and little by little we just started hanging out. He's played with me in the studio. He's been in various configurations of various Nashville bands that I've worked with. And after this past tour in 21, Daryl and I, we finally got in 20 shows after COVID. And it was it's a pretty big show with a lot of stuff, video screens and buses and trucks. And we got back to Nashville, and Guthrie and I were sitting in the living room with our 2 acoustic guitars, and we were playing, and we had some fun playing some old Doc Watson and old blues and things like that. And we just said, man, wouldn't this be cool if we could just go on the road and just do this? And we said, yeah, that would be really cool. And then we said, let's just take the living room onto the stage, just us, 2 guitars, and tell some stories. And so that's what we did. And we tried it out in Nashville. We did 2 shows, one at Rudy's Jazz Club. We figured we'd start down in the Gulch and see where it took us. And then we did the Franklin Theater, which we're actually streaming this Sunday night on mandolin.com. And it was great. People seemed to like it. It was really comfortable, super easy because, as I said, it's just us, 2 guitars, 3 mics, no amps, no nothing. And it's, we can get up and go, just pick up the guitars and go.
One of the I'm in Nashville and have been here for quite a while, and I know that you've commented. We'll get into this a little bit later, but I know you've commented as it regards your memoir that you came out with recently, that the Nashville portion of your life is kind of reserved for the next book.
Yeah,
and I'm wondering. I get the impression that you maybe were embraced in Nashville, not that you didn't expect to be, but I know just from the way people talk about you behind your back as a keyboard player in town, that you're really an appreciated, welcomed musical entity here in town. Is that what is it about now being in Nashville and working with people like you named, that kind of separates that from a lot of what else you've done in the past?
Well, I appreciate you saying that behind my back, which is, you can say it in front of my back and behind my back. But that's that. Listen, I take that as a big compliment. I have a great respect for the players and the musicians and all the folks here. I think I felt pretty comfortable coming here at first. But one of the first things, I came here in the late 90s to try to write some songs. And little by little, I realized that it was okay to visit, but if you really wanted to be part of the community, you really had to be here.
Yeah.
And it would be things like, I'd be here doing a songwriting session and someone would say, hey, you're going to be around next week. You could come and sing on this thing. And I'd be, oh man, now I'm leaving town, and little by little, I realized that the way to really be part of this community was to be there.
Yeah.
And, so then we finally did get a place here. But the first demo session I did in the late 90s, I did it with a guy named Keith Follesay. He and I wrote some songs together.
Sure.
Keith's a really well-known Nashville writer. And he said, yeah, come on, we'll have some fun. We'll cut a demo. He goes, I'll put a band together. And I said, great. And I had never been in a studio in Nashville, with the players. And I didn't know what to expect, so the numbers charts, and how fast everybody picked up on the song and how quick everybody just was right there. And I was playing along and I realized, the bar is set pretty high here musically, and I've been the only band I'd ever really played with was with Daryl and our various bands over the years. So, obviously I'm pretty comfortable doing that, and I could I wouldn't say coast, but yeah, I could, a little bit. And I started practicing. I came to Nashville. I said, man, if I'm going to be playing with these guys, I got to up my game a little bit. And I really did. I woodshedded, I practiced, and I dug back into this early influences that I had, the folk and the blues and the real rootsy stuff that I was doing way before I met Daryl. And then I found this community of players who had similar roots and similar, inspiration. So that's when it all went like this, and it was really among the Americana community, Jim Lauderdale and Sam Bush and Buddy Miller and Jerry Douglas, those guys. I just felt really comfortable with them. And so that's where I took my solo world,
Well, I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is, I'm loving going through your book because I'm learning so much, but at the same time, it's validating some things that I've always kind of assumed. But there's a lot of people in this town that are very broad, have been exposed to a lot of things, we've got all kinds of music here. There are also people that grew up in country towns that believe that 3 chords and the truth philosophy. And that's kind of where they stop. And I know that you can go forever about all the things that influenced you, but I would love to know kind of what your perspective is on whether it's in Nashville or just music in general. You have always embraced everything, it seems like, musically. The show tunes as you were a kid, singing in Italian, I've always believed that you were a more serious doo-wop guy than a lot of people that know Chuck Berry. And I know that you know the impressions and all that. All of your music has embraced, I don't know what you couldn't have embraced. And I would think that makes it very easy for you to plug in to an evolving industry. And I know that's your roots, but you also talk about when you were playing with guitar and Daryl Hall was learning mandolin. So y'all were still doing rootsy stuff even then, right?
Daryl picked up the mandolin because he couldn't jam with us sitting on the steps in front of the house. His piano was upstairs.
Right.
And, he's such a damn good musician that, he just picked up the mandolin and started figuring it out. He never became like a mandolin player, but, he had great rhythm and he had great musical sensibility. So, he figured out what he needed to do to write a couple songs is basically what he did. The thing about, I'm old enough to remember music before rock and roll. My parents, World War II generation, all I heard growing up as a little kid was big band, swing, ragtime, that kind of thing. And so when rock and roll started happening in the early 50s, I was still really, really young, but I was old enough to realize that something had happened.
Right.
And I think, it's kind of cool to really know that I realized there was other music before rock and roll. Yeah. And then I took the ride, and my musical life is totally in parallel with the way rock and roll from the very beginning, from, as you said, Chuck Berry, Elvis and the Everly Brothers and all that, right up through whatever's happened. I got off the train about 15 years ago, I can just tell you, in terms of pop music.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter to me anymore. But anyway, right. And you know what I'm talking about. But,
sure. Sure.
But I just I always, I felt I wanted to be versatile. I wanted to play. You said three chords and the truth, and so many unbelievable songs just have been written like that. I'm more like 15 chords, and hopefully I'm not lying. That's how
Right.
I look at it. In fact, that's what Guthrie busts me on that all the time. He goes, you're playing too many chords. I go, yeah, man, I like chords. What can I tell you? It's a lost art, I think. But anyway, so it's just I like bossa nova. I played Joe Beam and did that, and of course, I do like swing and ragtime. And I like a lot of really I like I'm a Doc Watson fanatic. Mississippi John Hurt was a huge influence on me. I got to meet him and see him when I was in high school, when he would come to Philadelphia and play the folk festivals. And I actually owned John Hurt's guitar that he played at Newport in 1963.
Oh, wow.
Which was given to me by my guitar teacher, who is right there.
Awesome.
Yeah.
The great Jerry Ricks, he's my inspiration. I got him right there, and I got Mississippi John Hurt over there. I can't show it to you because I can't spin my computer. So, but I'm sitting in the vortex between those two guys. So that way, when I play, I can kind of, feel the vibes.
Right.
But but Jerry Ricks was an amazing guy, an amazing guitarist, and he would. When all the folkies and a lot of the traditional players would come to town, some of them would stay at his house. He became John Hurt's kind of tour manager in the early 60s. And when John Hurt died, his guitar was given to Jerry. And then I asked Jerry to play on the first two Hall & Oates albums. And he and I are playing. And on the first two Hall & Oates albums, I am playing Mississippi John Hurt's guitar on those records.
Wow.
And now I have it. I bought it back just a few years ago from a collector that had it in Colorado.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I love that. I love the Philly vibe too, John. Speaking, we're going to go to Philly right now. One of the listeners tuning in to a good friend of mine, good friend of the program, Audra McLaughlin says, my favorite band forever, John. I'm from Philly. So there you go. A little Philly in the house, brotherly love. Glad she got to participate in there. Hey, I want to ask you this too, John, because everybody knows out there you guys have sold more records than any other duo in music history. When you think about that, go back and reflect on your career, I mean, what comes to mind? Obviously great songs, the hard work you guys put in, but to hear that from publications, media, fans, everybody just in the music industry, that's a lot of big meaning for you guys, right?
Well, listen, we worked our ass off. We never let up. I mean, we never took our foot off the gas from 1972 until 1987. And to be honest with you, my whole life was music. There was nothing else in my life. I mean, we wrote, we recorded, we toured. We wrote, we recorded, we toured. And we made an album every year from 1972 until 86. And sometimes more, because we throw in a couple live albums and a couple compilations, But, it really was, it was a full-time dedicated thing. And, I just, I don't know what to say about it, other than the fact that it's, I feel very proud of the legacy that we created together. And I'm really blown away by the fact that people still want to hear it. Mm-hmm. And a younger generation still likes that music. It's amazing. I couldn't, if someone would have asked me in the 70s, early 70s, will you be around 50 years from now? And will, any of these songs, I could never have imagined in a million years. But here we are. And, it's I guess it's a testament to the songwriting,
No doubt. Too.
A part of that journey that I want to ask you about, I led a conversation this morning with a group of people that was about dreams that came true for you that you did not even know you had. And the reason I started that conversation is because I wanted to ask you about the Temptations.
Okay.
I don't believe that when you were listening to the Temps early on, because they were a big influence on you, obviously they were a big influence on Daryl as well. I don't think you had on your bucket list to perform songs by the Temptations with the Temptations and have them sing songs that I wrote.
You got that right.
Right. So, and all of that happened. And I just want to, I want to know what that was like when you're, and I wonder even if you took it in as much when it happened as much as got it later and went, wait a minute, I just had Ruffin in my monitor and I was singing the other part, right?
And doing the steps.
Yeah. So, I mean, a dream come true that you never had. It was why I kind of thought of that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I want, it's such a full circle thing for you. I want to hear your take on it.
Well, let me ask, I'll put it this way.
Yeah.
If you ever have you ever had a psychedelic experience?
I have not.
Okay. Well, being on stage at the Apollo Theater with Eddie Kendrick and David Ruffin was like having a psychedelic experience where there was no drugs involved.
Yeah.
The only drug was the music. And
Right.
it was serious. And I can honestly say this. I felt like I was above myself looking at what was happening.
Right.
It was very, it's very hard to describe. When Daryl and I first met, I had a group in 1960, actually in high school, and he had a group. He had like a doo-wop vocal group. I had more of a combo, an instrumental group. And my group broke up. His group was breaking up. I joined up with Daryl as a backup guitarist. And one of the first things we did was we went to New York to do a showcase in New York, in the Village. And after the showcase, Daryl said, I got a surprise for you. Because he was friends with Paul Williams from the Temptations.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, we're going to go to the Apollo and see the Temps. I said, great. So we went literally backstage, hung out in the dressing room with them. And then they took us out and we sat right in the front row, literally, with the stage like right here. And that was 1968, I guess. So now fast forward to the 80s and the show that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. We're on the stage at the Apollo with Eddie Kendrick and David Ruffin, and we asked them to do the whole thing. They wore the black tuxedos. They were totally into it. And we did this amazing Temptations medley. And it was just, like I said, it was life-changing experience. 68, I was in the front row watching it happen, the Temptations. And now I'm on the stage looking down at that same front row. It's hard to describe. I can't really put it into words.
Right. Well, just I would have to think there's a part of that experience that has to feel a little bit affirming, kind of like the only reason I wound up here is because I chose the right path, because nobody could have duplicated that journey.
No.
But you guys, right?
And that was really the turning point for Daryl and I to kind of pack it in. We actually stopped right after that. We had done Live Aid, and we did We Are the World, and then we did the Apollo Theater. And I remember after the show, he and I sat down. You might have read this in the book because I think I described it. We sat down in the after party, a reception thing that we had. And I remember we looked at each other and we went, what do we do? We've had #1 records and platinum albums. We've been touring the world nonstop. We can't, it's almost like a full circle, really. Mm-hmm. And that's when we took a break. We took about 3 or 4 years and we didn't record or do anything during that late 80s period. And, probably not the best thing to do commercially, but it was psychically and it was soulfully the right thing to do.
Right. Right.
When you look at all those great songs, and I can tell you this, John, from just being a fan since the 80s and growing up on just that great music you guys put out, you make my dreams come true. And I think just when you instantaneously turn that on and you look back and the first few lines of the instrumentation, you knew that was Hall & Oates automatically on the radio. How special was that for you guys to lock that in? And of course, many, many of the hits out there. I mean, Rich Girl, we go on and on and on out there, but that particular song, even today, and I go to a ballpark as a sports fan, that comes on between innings of baseball or football, and you automatically know who that is. That had to be special just to step in the studio to record that and get a piece of music history.
Well, I'm going to be totally honest with you. That song didn't seem that special. In fact, it almost didn't get cut.
Wow.
I'll tell you another funny story about that. We wrote, it was really Daryl's groove. When you hear that keyboard thing, that's his that thing. And then we wrote the lyrics together and everything, and we took it into our manager and we played a demo of it, just a very real basic demo of it. And he said, this was his exact words, because it had that line, like a flame that burns a candle, the candle feeds the flame. And he said, who the hell you guys think you are, Wordsworth? And we were like, what? He said, that's a cool line. And he was like, you guys, well, so we obviously we cut the track, and it wasn't one of our big hits when it came out. It was a hit, but it wasn't like a #1 record. But now that song has taken on this incredible life of its own. I mean, you can't go anywhere without hearing it. It just had, we've hit over 1 billion streams on it, and it's mind blowing. It just really, I think it's that great infectious groove and the simplicity of that title. No. You make my dreams. It can't get any more basic than that. And I think that there's an elegance in the beauty of the simplicity, I guess.
No, I love that too. Hey, let's. I was sticking with the tracks. I mean, again, you guys, so many out there, #1 singles. People feel it grooving too when they talk about Rich Girl. Was that kind of the one? Was that a little bit different story for Rich Girl? And if so, what's the backstory on that one?
Well, that was actually Daryl wrote that, and it was written about a guy who was a friend of his girlfriend in college, who was the heir to a fast food fortune. Wow. And he was completely irresponsible, and he was completely and obviously, he wrote it. He couldn't say "you're a rich guy." That wasn't going to cut it. So, so he changed. But I remember when we were in Kansas City, and we were at a barbecue place after the show, and we had gone there in a limo. And when we came out of the barbecue joint, the limo had left. They just left. And we were in the middle of someplace. We had no idea where we were. And this guy came along with a pickup truck, and he had a bunch of firewood in the back. And he recognized us, and he goes, "Oh, I'll drive you guys to the hotel." His girlfriend was in the front, and almost our whole band, we got in the back of the pickup sitting on the wood. And Rich Girl came on the radio, and that's when it went to #1.
Wow.
And that's crazy.
I love that. The stories behind the songs, but that's what it's about too as well. Hey, Jeff, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to ask, you were talking about how that originally you didn't think that song was that special. And I know as a musician, I've been in that place where the things that you think are going to hit don't, the things that you know won't, and then time changes everything. You talk in your book about very specifically about how you knew She's Gone was special when y'all recorded that. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to have to go back through the book more slowly because I've been flying through it trying to catch up on everything. But I did not see where you addressed the re-release. And I was kind of curious what went on because, there was 3 years, I think, between the first release of She's Gone, and it only went top 60. And I know today we would be very aware of chart placement. So did you always think, oh, it was really that special? Or was there a period of time where it's like, well, I thought it was. What just happened? And 3 years later, has a new life. What was going on there with that?
Well, I mean, that album, the Abandoned Luncheonette album in particular, is one of my favorites, and for a lot of reasons. It was, we got to do that with Arif Mardin, one of the great producers at the time, and we knew that She's Gone was just a very, very, it was magical. It had the right coming. We had Bernard Purdy on drums and Gordon Edwards on bass, and Richard T played a secondary piano. We had this incredible New York rhythm section. Guys who were at the top of their game in New York at the time, and then Arif Mardin doing this incredible string arrangement, and the song just was, it we knew that it was the song on the record. And as you said, we released it, nothing much happened. And then about less than 6 months, I think, after we released it, a group called Tavares released it. And they had a #1 R&B record with it, which also,
and that was, just for the audience, Tavares was a soul group. I think they actually had some songs on the Saturday Night Fever soundtrack and stuff like that later. But
and they did a great job with it, and it went to #1 on the R&B charts.
Yeah,
which didn't surprise Daryl and I, because we started out on R&B radio, so for us it was normal. And then what happened was, as you said, 3 years later, Sarah Smile came out. And then we had already moved to RCA Records by that time for our 4th album, because we were on Atlantic for the first 3 and then RCA. And so RCA thought, Atlantic thought, well, on the coattails of Sarah Smile, let's see if we can release She's Gone Again. And it finally did get into the top 5.
Got it.
But interestingly enough, it was about 3 or 4 years ago that I finally got a platinum album for Abandoned Luncheonette, believe it or not.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. only took 42 years. So
Yep.
Good things for those who wait, right?
Yeah, man. Well, and then you've got, did I see where there's also a version that has Destiny's Child singing? There's another version by an overseas artist or something that had Destiny's Child singing on it as well.
No idea.
Yeah, Google it.
Okay, I'd like to hear it.
You have my permission to Google yourself, John Oates.
We'll Google myself.
Well, I love this. We'll take a break for the sponsors here in just a little bit. But I know, John, we'd love for you to play one for us. I know if you don't mind playing one for us here on the show, we'd love to hear the beautiful singing there.
You got any requests? I'm not
Jeff,
gonna listen to you. You can request one if you want.
All right, Jeff. You know what? I love it, Jeff. You know what? You've been around the music so long, longer than I have too. At the same time, but Jeff, I'm gonna let you pick the request.
I want him to play. Oh gosh, he was a friend of mine.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Is that okay?
Well, yeah. Except I haven't played it in forever.
Okay. Well, then you do what you want. So.
Wow.
I don't like putting people on the spot, which is why I don't like naming those songs. And see, now I just did it.
That's why I told you I wasn't going to pay attention to your request.
Well, there you go.
Love it.
I'll play Mississippi John Hurt song.
Okay.
Here we go.
Police officer, now how can that be? You can arrest everybody, but you're afraid to stay good. He's a bad man, cruel old Stagger Lee. Really do lie and told Stagger Lee, now please don't take my life. I got 3 children and darling, lovely wife. Bad man. You bad man, you bad man, cruel old Stagger Lee. I said boom, 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 with that 44. Stagger Lee shot Billy July down upon the bottom floor. Now he's a bad man. He's a bad man. He's a bad man. Cruel old Stagger Lee. to the jury. Hey boys, what you gonna think of that? Stagger Lee shot Billy the Lion about a $5 Stetson hat. He's a bad man. Yeah, he's a bad man. He's a bad man. Cool old Stagger Lee.
There it is, John Oates on the Backstage Pass. Love that sound, and the music continues on for many generations too out there at the same time. We'll take a quick time out here. Some more questions with John coming up here in the show, and of course, I got one in the margin there being from Philly. They're going to ask him if he's still an Eagles fan, so that's one of the big things I want to check with.
We're in some dangerous territory now.
Dangerous territory here. We'll come back and word from Bangtail Whiskey and MitchMacs. More to come with the great John Oates. It's the Backstage Pass. It's Brandon and Jeff. Hang tight. We'll be right back.
The Bangtail pour is comprised of a sweet corn mash base. The front has a subtle sweetness and not too sharp. It has notes of a medium char or white oak for a smoky flavor in the middle, and the tail has a super smooth and warm finish.
Go behind the scenes with some of the biggest artists in music today with the Backstage Pass, powered by the SportsGuysPodcast.com. Join Brandon Morrill and his co-host Kirsty Krause, Jeff McMahon, as they talk to rising stars and legends about their music careers. Listen to their latest tracks and learn fun facts about the men and women behind the music you love. And be sure to tune into the Backstage Pass Monday through Friday from 3:30 to 6:30, powered by the SportsGuysPodcast.com. And welcome into the Backstage Pass. And back here on the show again, Brandon Morrill, Jeff McMahon. Don't miss your chance to see John Oates and Guthrie Trap live. Check it out, of course. John Oates Official on Instagram, and, of course, his socials out there, too. And if I had to get a ticket, I would actually pay if I was close to any of those shows right there, too, in that particular area. Great to have John Oates here on the show with us, too, at the same time. So I'm going to throw that out there because Audra wanted me to ask this, too, John. Eagles fan, or is there a little rift kind of coming there, too, as well? They had a pretty decent season. They made the playoffs.
Yeah, well, they had Jalen Hurts. I'm a big college football fan, so I love to see these young players coming up into the NFL. It's fantastic. The thing about an Eagles fan, they're pretty serious. They're pretty scary and serious people. I got to be very careful when I say this. When I was a young kid, my dad was a New York Giants fan, so of course I was a New York Giants fan. Then we lived in Pennsylvania, and I was an Eagles fan. Mm-hmm. Then I moved to Colorado, and I was a Broncos fan. Now I'm in Nashville. I'm kind of a Titans fan. So it seems like everywhere I move, I kind of sign on with whoever's in town.
That's it. Follow that team, no doubt. Hey, tell me about this one because I turn it on all the time. Love it so much. I'll play the crap out of it, no doubt. Private Eyes. I want to get the story behind that one too, and I'm sure you got some great knowledge and great memories of that song, right?
You're asking about all the Daryl songs. Private Eyes is definitely a Daryl song. He actually wrote that with his girlfriend's sister, Jana Allen. Jana was a young songwriter, and she was coming up in the 80s, and unfortunately she passed away a long time ago. But she was really good, very talented, and she came up with two really cool things. She came up with the title and the idea for "Kiss on My List" and "Private Eyes." So that's the story behind that song.
Love that. No doubt too. And like I said, you're looking back and just so much over the career too. I always do this because we have so many artists that come on the program here, John. What's kind of the best advice you can give a young artist who, I guess, wants it as bad as you do, gets into the industry, hears a lot of things that take them a lot of different directions, gets their mind spinning. What's the best advice, I guess, you were given or you could give someone now who wants to be a musician full time?
Well, Jeff will probably know what I'm going to say, but of course, the musical landscape's changed radically, so it's also different now. I don't envy young musicians trying to make it because it's just so darn hard. But study the people you like. Really try to learn from the masters. It's the old artistic. Every artist through history has always done that. Try to emulate the people that you respect and the people you like, and copy them basically, because in doing so, you'll get an insight into what makes, what they did that made you like them, whether it's their approach to melody or their chords or rhythm or whatever. And then if you get that far and you really are serious, maybe an original style will emerge. But, you gotta, the rock and roll tree is just a big, it's just one thing built upon the other. There's just go back in time, man. Pick, you want to be a songwriter, listen to Joni Mitchell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know what? I want to offer this and then get your take on this, because I know this is your perspective, but you didn't talk about it in the context of music, at least not where I heard it. In your book, you talk about your past as a wrestler. You talk about your wresling.
You guys are digging deep. Holy.
And well, no. I mean, I'm just, hey,
all right. That's all right.
I'm going to pull something else out of here in a minute. But one of the things that you talk about as a wrestler, which is one of the things that I have really embraced as a musician, and I'm going to paraphrase, but hopefully you'll know what I'm talking about. You talk something about making the most of the tools that you have, or your, you know what I'm talking about? Speak to that in the context of what you've done musically, because I think you've probably applied that there, right?
Well, yes, so sort of. Yeah. I mean, I'm a small person. Okay. I've always been short. So I always pick things that work for short people. I drove race cars and I wrestled. Because when you wrestle, you wrestle in a weight class, so you're somewhat even. I tried to play football until I got run over so many times. That was very depressing and really painful. So yeah, I just became a wrestler. I could be good at wrestling, and I was very serious about it. And it was kind of interesting too, because my wrestling kind of defined my future in a lot of ways, because I got a scholarship, actually 2 scholarships to go to a Pennsylvania State college, but they were in the boondocks, and I grew up in a small town in Pennsylvania, and I wanted to be in the city in Philadelphia, and so I went to Temple University and didn't take the wrestling scholarships. And had I not done that, I never would have met Daryl Hall. Who knows what my life would have been like, So in a way, because I didn't want to wrestle anymore, and I went to Temple University because it was in the city, it kind of defined it. But yeah, you do. You have to. I think you have to be realistic about your strengths and weaknesses. I think maybe that. I don't know if you're alluding to that, but that's kind of how I see it. You need to kind of have a realistic. You need to examine your, what you've got going and what you can do and what you can't do, and if there's something you can't do and you want to try to overcome it, more power to you, man. But in the meantime, make the most of what you got.
Yeah.
Love it too. And that's just so true when it comes to sports and music. They just so overlap very well. The mentality, I coached for many years at the high school level, and some kids love playing the guitar on the side, and those things just really integrate very well. And that's why I chose to build this show around those 2 categories, no doubt. Hey, John, tell me about this, because 2 distinct honors you guys received: 2003, the Songwriters Hall of Fame, 2014, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in Cleveland, Ohio, which is a great city. Been there many times. I've been to the museum. You think back and you look at all the accolades and honors through your career. What do you remember most about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, of course, and then the Songwriters Hall of Fame?
Well, the Songwriters Hall of Fame came a few years before the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it was very special to me because to be included in the great legacy of American songwriters is really, that's important. Because I mean, I think of people like Cole Porter and George Gershwin, and the Brill Building, and this Carole King, and and all these amazing songwriters who've Lieber and Stoller, and to be included in that elite company is very, very important and very special. And then moving forward to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I kind of, although it was amazing for our career, and it's really, you get a lot of press and notoriety, but the honest God's truth is, had we not written those songs, we wouldn't be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So I like to, want to put the cart before the horse, you know what I mean? So in a sense, the Songwriters Hall of Fame opened up the door to everything. And the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame just put a big stamp on it, I guess.
Love it too. Well, hey, we do a little thing, John, to wrap it up here on the show called Rapid Fire. So whatever comes to mind.
Well, hang on.
Oh,
hang
go
on.
ahead. I
got one more. Well, no, I just, I want to know what your motivation was for the book. I have not made it all the way through yet. Certainly there's a lot of your musical history in it, which is great. But there's a lot of other things in it too, just for the potential reader. If you don't pay close attention, you're watching Night of the Living Dead, and then you turn around and you're cutting a record, and then you go to the bathroom and you come back and you're slamming the brakes on, dropping an almost dead body in front of a police station. So
I've got a crazy life.
No, it's great. It's great. But there's always, or not always, but there always seems to be some kind of story, some kind of impetus that makes you go, okay, now my life is in a place where I know the story I want to tell. What is it ultimately that you would want somebody to pull out of this? I know what I'm pulling out of it every day as a musician, but it reaches a lot of people beyond that, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, I like to, first of all, the book's called Change of Season, in case anybody doesn't know what we're talking about. I didn't know I wanted to write a book. I mean, I thought that someday I might, but it wasn't really, there you go. Thank you. Thanks for the plug. I needed that. I was hoping you'd come through for me.
No, I'm there, man.
But anyway, I thought maybe someday. And then I had done a series of interviews with a guy named Chris Epting. Great guy. And he's a history, right? He's a writer, he's an author, and a history buff. And we would do these interviews, and he always seemed to get me in a way that a lot of people didn't. One day he just said to me, he said, "Man, you got so many cool stories. We ought to write a book. I'll help you if you want." And I thought, you know what, maybe I'm going to try this. And so he guided me. He really did. He pushed me and guided me. And he was a great collaborator. He was an amazing researcher. He would come up with stuff. He would dig back into my past and find things that I totally didn't remember. And he would say, "Hey, man, in 1974, you were here and you said this, or you did this." It was just amazing. And it was kind of like regressive therapy. All of a sudden, these memories started flooding back. Stuff that, had I not written the book, I might not have ever remembered again,
Right.
And so what I wanted, then when I started and I took it on, I said, then I got scared, because I thought, how do I tell my personal story when my personal story is so wrapped up in the Hall & Oates experience? Because, I've been working with Daryl since I've been 18 years old. So I can't even separate it. It's almost very hard to separate it. And so that was a big challenge. And I think I kind of worked my way through that. And the book was a work in progress. It took me like 2 years. And luckily, Daryl and I were on the road the whole time. So we'd be together on the bus or the plane or whatever. And the last thing I wanted to do was put all this work into the book and then have him go, "Hey, this sucks. You can't say that. Don't do this." And so I literally, I'd write a page or two, and I'd just hand it to him, or I'd hand him my laptop and I go, "Read this, see if this is cool." And, especially when it had something to do with him.
Sure.
And so along the way, he kind of approved it along the way. So that part was covered. And I just wanted to talk about my other parts of my life, flying airplanes and living in Colorado and meeting my wife and building a house and having this whole other reality outside of music. And so I just wanted to do it. And and that's, I think I'm pretty happy with it. And I still haven't done part 2 in Nashville yet, but I'm thinking about it.
Jeff, you can maybe get a copy of that book sent to my doorstep, no doubt, too. So I'll have to get my copy and read right through it. And I'm still trying to read through Randy Travis's book that Randy and Mary sent me too from the show here too at the same time. So I got to finish Randy's, get to John's, and kind of get that on there too. Because
let me know where, and I'll send you one.
All right, I sure will. We appreciate that too, no doubt. Hey, let me ask you about this. A couple will do 2 or 3 rapid fire here. So whatever comes to mind, just let it go out there. You guys are, ubiquitous out there for film, TV, commercials. What was the best commercial in your mind or film that you were like, you know what, this is my favorite one to appear in?
No doubt about it. 500 Days of Summer.
500 Days of Summer.
That was when they used "You Make My Dreams Come True," and that's when it exploded on the internet. My son and my wife and I were in LA at the Grove shopping area.
Yeah.
And it was the afternoon, and it was playing. I knew the song was in the movie, but I had no idea how they used it. It could have been like 10 seconds. You know how it is with movies. They
sure
play your songs in the movie, and then you got to listen and go, was that it on the radio? Anyway, so we're sitting in the theater. It was in the afternoon. There was hardly anyone in the theater. There were a few teenage girls in the theater. And the sequence came on when he's falling in love and he's dancing around the park, and there's animation and the song comes on. They played the whole song. And I was like, whoa. And after the song was over, these girls started clapping. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute. There's something going on here. That really connected. And so that's when I knew it was really, and I thought they did an amazing thing. Yeah.
I love that.
It wasn't too rapid fire, but I talk a lot.
You're good. I love it. It's all good. Give me the John Oates favorite food and drink, I guess, beverage. When there's one of those rough days, you're like, man, I've got to eat this. I've got to drink this.
I've got to eat this and I've got to drink this. Well, you know what? The whole side of my mother's family was Italian. I grew up in an Italian family, and so lasagna. And my grandmother made it. It was the best thing ever. It's probably the only thing I really make well. And every holiday, usually at Christmas, we make lasagna. That's our go-to thing. And I'm not much of a drinker, so I'm going to have to stick with an Arnold Palmer.
That's one of the best ones out there too. All right, I love this one too because I like to pull it out of the bag from time to time. Let's just say John Oates wake up in the morning. There's $40 million in John Oates' bank account. You won the lottery. What's the first thing you do with it?
I'm gonna probably buy a car. Hey, haven't you ever noticed as soon as musicians make money, the first thing they do is buy a car?
Definitely. That's what they do, no doubt. Well, hey, John, looking forward to the tour with Guthrie. Check out John Oates Official. And then, of course, always hallandotes.com. Been doing it for a long time. And, of course, the music, making people feel good, always does, always has, and always will. John, appreciate the time. Glad you enjoyed the visit here on the show, my friend. And definitely keep us posted on the new projects, new music. And, of course, you guys continue success down the road. Best of luck with the tour with Guthrie. Come back anytime, my friend.
Oh, that was a fun interview. I appreciate it, Jeff. You really, you got to bring the musician part out of me, man. I love that.
I do my best.
Exactly.
I do my best.
The great John Oates here. It's the Backstage Pass. Some more great shows coming up next week. Stay tuned to our socials out there, no doubt. And thanks to Bangtail Whiskey, MitchMacs.com, and Hank Jr. Productions. We'll see you guys next week on the show. Have a great weekend. Until then, good night.
Thanks, John.